Okay, hello. Today's lesson is going to be a follow-up to yesterday about the quadratic formula. We're going to learn something about the discriminant. But before we dive into this, just a quick check from yesterday. If you want to check 15 from the homework or any of the other odds from the other day, just kind of check them, make sure you're okay. And then don't forget to turn in this assignment, right? So we'll be turning them in every day. So you can check this one and then turn it in, and then we'll get on with the rest of the lesson. Okay, so there should be a note sheet today for this 4.7 day 2. And if you don't have the note sheet, talk to the sub and they should be able to get it for you. All right, so our goal today, which you can fill in right on your sheet, pause the video here, is to use the discriminant to determine how many solutions a quadratic equation has. All right, and we kind of know graphically, we talked about when you graph, the solutions are where it crosses on x-axis. So a lot of times you'll have two solutions. Or graphically, if it crosses just once and bounces back, that's just one solution. In this case, their one answer is x equals -1. Okay, and then there's actually a no solutions case where it does not cross at all, and there's no real solutions. Later, we'll actually learn how to find imaginary ones, but for now, we'll just say there's no real solutions. Okay, so we're going to figure out, this is what it looks like graphically, but if we had to do it with the formula, how can we tell which situation it is? Two solution, one solution, or no solution. Okay, so the way we do this is something called the discriminant, and it basically determines how many solutions we have. Okay, so the discriminant is just part of the quadratic formula, so I'm going to have you circle it right with me on the sheet, and it's just a number under the check mark. Okay, and the whole purpose of this discriminant, this b squared minus 4 times a times c, it'll be a number, some value that we'll calculate, and its whole purpose, or one of the purposes of the discriminant, is to determine the number of solutions. Okay, that's one of the things. That's kind of its main purpose, is to determine the number of solutions. Okay, so the discriminant, again, is this number under the check mark. And so just to try and introduce the topic, I have three different situations you can see here. And in this first case, the discriminant is 0. All right, and in the middle case, the discriminant is the value, -49. Discriminant is actual number, a value. And in the last one, we did, you remember that number there is just b squared minus 4ac. So we were going along doing our quadratic formula, and we got b squared minus 4ac to be positive 49. All right, and again, that's our discriminant value. And so the question is, how many answers are there? All right, so I'm actually going to quiz you on these and then go through the answers. All right, so this first one is actually the example of the one solution case. Okay, and the reason is, maybe you reason through it and could figure it out, is that the square root of 0 is 0. All right, so here we have 5 plus or minus 0 over 2. So we do 5 plus 0 over 2 and 5 minus 0 over 2. And in both cases, we just get a single answer of 2.5. Okay, so when you get a 0 underneath there, that's the one solution. The middle case, you can't do the square root. There's no real solution to the square root of negative number. All right, so in this case, because we can't do the square root of a negative, there is no solution, or no real solution at least, to that quadratic. All right, and then the last one is kind of the case we've hit so far in yesterday's lesson. That's the two solutions case, where you have a positive number underneath there, and these two answers are 5 plus or minus 7 over 2. All right, so we basically got 5 plus 7 over 2 and 5 minus 7 over 2 as our answers. All right, so that would be 6 and -1. Okay, so that's kind of the two solutions case when you have a positive number underneath there. All right, so to summarize all this, we're going to make a little chart. So the discriminant, again, it's just a number, a value, b squared minus 4ac. And then we have number of solutions to the quadratic. Sorry, that's a rough U there, solutions. Okay, so three things can happen. If the discriminant is 0, like shown up above, we have one solution. If discriminant is negative, we won't be able to do the square root of a negative. So we have no solutions. And then if it's positive, like in the last case up there, then it's just kind of the normal case, and we'll end up with 2 solutions. Okay, so this is the whole point, is the discriminant can be 0, negative, or positive, and that'll determine how many solutions to the quadratic. Okay, so some of the early questions in homework, I think the first 3 you'll have to solve. All right, and what we're going to do is instead of doing the whole formula, I'm going to write it up here real quick, is instead of writing it all out right away, we're going to start with the discriminant. Okay, so basically we're going to do A, B, and C, and then just start doing the discriminant. All right, so I'm just going to start with b squared minus 4ac. I'm not even going to do the rest of the formula. All right, and it looks like we get 4 minus 4. All right, so that is 0. So that means the number underneath the check mark is 0. So if we go back to our chart, a 0 discriminant will have 1 solution. Okay, so I need to keep going and actually find. This said solve. Our goal was to solve. So we know that there's going to be 1 solution. So if the goal is to solve, then we should actually find the 1 solution. All right, so now we can go over to the formula and say we're going to do opposite of b, which is the same as the b over there. And then we have a 0 under the check mark over 2 times a. Okay, so we're going to have negative 2 plus or minus 0 over 2. And that's just going to be one answer, because when you add or subtract 0, it's still negative 2. Until we get our one answer of negative 1. All right, so as an example, if the discriminant turned out to have been negative here, we could have stopped. We wouldn't have even had to do the rest of it, and just said, hey, there's no solution, so we could just stop. All right, so I'm going to give one more solve one for you. All right, this is on the bottom of the sheet there. And just start with the discriminant, and if it has answers, find them. If it doesn't have any answers, just say no solutions, and be done. So I'm going to have you give this one a shot. All right, back with you. So hopefully you found that this one, I believe, has no solutions. So we could get 0 on one side. You still want to do that, and then do A, B, and C. All right, and we're going to start with just the b squared minus 4ac, the discriminant, to see if we have any answers. So we end up with 4 minus 12. Okay, and so because we got a negative number, we can stop, right? We don't even have to keep going because there is no answer. Right? We got a negative discriminant. So this is the discriminant, it's negative 8. And so we can just say no real solutions. Okay, so we don't even have to keep going and doing the rest of it. We can just stop there and say, hey, our goal is to solve, but it doesn't have any answers, so we can just stop and call it good. Okay, so the first part of homework will have you actually solve. I think numbers 1 through 3 will have you solve, so do it like the last 2 questions. And then on the back of the sheet, if you want to look, there's 3 problems here, and you don't actually have to solve them. You just have to say what's the value of the discriminant, and then how many solutions does it have. All right, so I'm going to walk through one with you and then see if you can do the other 2 on the back here. So first one, A is 1, B is negative 3, C negative 4. All right, and I'm just going to do b squared minus 4ac. So make sure you put parentheses for the negative. 4 times a times c. So it looks like it's going to be 9 minus negative 16. So we're going to get 25 there. So that's our discriminant. Again, it's just a number. And because it's positive, right, it's positive, we have 2 solutions, right? And if you forget that, look back at the chart, but you should see on there that there's 2 solutions. Okay, and we don't actually have to find them again. It just says find the discriminant and say, hey, how many solutions? So here it's positive 2 solutions, and our discriminant is 25. Okay, so this is on the back sheet for you. Give this one a shot. All right, here we go. A, -1, B, 2, C, -1. So we're going to do discriminant, b squared minus 4ac. So it's 2 squared minus 4 times -1 times -1. A lot of negatives. All right, but maybe let's multiply those together. So we'll square the 2, and then -1 times -1 is +1. So 4 minus 4 is also known as 0. So we should label that guy. That's Mr. or Mrs. Discriminant right there. And because it's 0, again, we can go back to the chart. This means when we're doing the quadratic formula, we'd have 0 under the check mark. So we'd get blah, 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 something plus or minus 0 over something. And this is going to be one solution because adding, subtracting 0 is the same, right? So we don't actually have to find the solutions again. We just have to say Mr. Discriminant is 0, and so we have one solution. Right, and this is the later homework problems. You don't actually have to find them. Just say how many solutions. Okay, last one. Try it out, and then I'll go over it with you. All right, here we go. This one I'm guessing is no solutions case, but let's find out. A is 2, B is -2, C is 3. Here's the discriminant, the part underneath the check mark. -2 squared minus 4 times A times C. 4 minus 8 times 3, so that's 24. And so that's going to be -20. So that means, again, if we were doing our formula, we would have -20 in the check mark, which isn't the real number, right? So after we find discriminant is negative here, we can just say no real solutions. Okay. Real quick summary of what we learned today. All right, graphically, we know that a quadratic, three things can happen. You can end up with two solutions where it crosses twice, one solution where it crosses the x-axis only once, or no solution. Okay, and all we wanted to do is relate that now to our quadratic formula, and the key is the number under the check mark, that's discriminant. And so when it's two solutions, you have a positive number underneath there, and then you end up with like plus or minus some value. In the one solution case, it's a 0 underneath the check mark. Discriminant is 0. And in the no solutions case, the discriminant's a negative number, and then you get no answers because we can't do the square root of a negative number. Okay, so just a quick summary on homework here. 1 through 3 you actually have to solve, so you can start with the discriminant, right? Start with b squared minus 4ac, but then if it has answers, actually find the answers. All right, versus the later one, you don't have to actually solve, just find the discriminant and say one solution, two solutions, or no solutions. Okay, and 38 is just for funsies. I'm not going to make that one do. That's if you want to challenge yourself, give it a shot, but otherwise, it's just kind of an optional one. So there you go. Good luck. Thank you for listening.